As a little background, just as disclosure, as Shelley said, I've been an advisor to the brain for a long time now. Also, as you see the brain here, my screen resolution is much smaller, much less than I would normally have. I usually have a pretty high-res screen, and I've got a wide display laptop. But in order to make WebEx more efficient and so we can record the call, I've scaled down the res. So what you're seeing will look and feel a little bit different from my daily use of it, but this way we can all actually probably read the text properly. Tell me as I click through the brain if I go too quickly. Slow me down because I think that WebEx will have to catch up with the screen refresh and so forth. But right now I'm at a thought called dwiki, which I just entered this morning because as I do every day I process my email, and one of my friends was asking whether he should invite some friends who are starting a company called dwiki into this particular session. And sorry guys, I may be outing your company, but that's okay. You have a coming soon page on the web anyway. And so I added it to a thought called Wikivariants. So as I click on Wikivariants, you'll see here these are the various kinds of wikis that I've found over time. So, and I'll explain as I go how the brain works just for those of you who have very little experience with the brain. So every node is called a thought. Thoughts can have one or more child thoughts. Those are these down here below the active thought. They can have one or more parent thoughts. Those are these above. And also one or more jump thoughts. And that's this lateral connection. Really there's only two kinds of connection, up, down, and left, right. Because when I click on wikis, for example, Wikivariants now becomes a child thought. And we just kind of keep moving up and down that way. What you put above or below any thought is up to you. There's no structure inherent to the brain. It's a little bit like a wiki in the sense that how you structure it is completely up to you. So some of what I want to show you is the different cliches or the different ways that I have begun using the brain. And what I'll do is I'll just show a couple things, and then Shelley has a few questions to ask, which I can answer, and then we'll take some questions from you guys. So down here at the bottom is the history list. So this is actually, these are the thoughts that I've been clicking on recently. So if I want to go back to Wikivariants, I just click on Wikivariants. And that's pretty easy. My brain is full of not just business stuff, because I'm a technology analyst, so these are tech companies, but I have a whole bunch of things. So if I click up here at the top of the screen, this is called the pin board, and any thought that I drag up here will stay up here. So this is a thought called Words I Love, and it's got a whole lot of things in it like mastery and play and practice and presence. And just to show you a little bit about what happens, I'll click on mindfulness, and I'll wait a second while it refreshes. By the way, these are parent thoughts. These thoughts over on the right with a scroll bar, you'll notice the scroll bar here. These thoughts on the right are siblings of the current active thought, which means they are children of a common parent. So presence has as its children mindfulness, and over on the right, finding your location and glancing, for example. So we'll go follow those around a little bit more, but notice the scroll bar because that's just into the G's and H's. So if I go to mindfulness, and then I can go down to Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk, and I can look at deep listening and loving speech. I can look at a variety. And I can follow this back up into something like spiritual writers. So here's Stephen Batchelor, Jennifer Cobb, Eckhart Tolle, Marianne Williamson, et cetera, and that would take us back up to my bibliography, for example. And at some point pretty early in fleshing out my brain, I decided that I was adding a lot of books, and I decided to, and this was just the way I did it, I decided to attack the authors, not the books themselves. So I always have books under authors. So here I would have authors like Duane Elgin, David Barsamian, et cetera. And then at some point in the early brain, you could only have 256 child thoughts under any particular thought. So I started subcategorizing, which actually turned out to be really helpful. So I have here ethicists, and most of these people have actually written books. So here's Peter Singer, an ethicist. He wrote about animal liberation, rethinking life and death, et cetera, et cetera. And then there are other links under here as well. They're not all books. There was a scandal at Princeton about him. I don't even remember putting that in the brain. So that's one of the things that begins to happen. And Shelley, I just did a statistical count. I've got 86,600 thoughts right now with over 154,000 links between them.
Wonderful. I'll have to adjust our press release.
Well, if you can have a real-time count maybe, I don't know. So I've been doing this consistently for the last 10 years. I remember the day that Harlan actually showed me the brain for the first time, and I was like a duck in water. I thought, wow, this is exactly the kind of thing I need. Instead of bookmarks, this is a way I can keep track of what's going on, and I began feeding my brain and then gardening it. So I garden it a little bit all the time. And I'll show one more thought and then the thoughts around it, just to show you a couple more features, and then we'll go to Shelley's questions, and that'll take us deeper into the whole session. So down on the left here, there's a search box. In fact, if I click anywhere on the background of the brain, if I just click once now, it puts my cursor in the search box, and then I can just start typing K-L-E-I-N-E-R, and all of a sudden I'm at Kleiner-Perkins. If I hit my down arrow once and then hit Enter, I have just jumped through the 86,000 thoughts to whatever thought I know how to write. And one of the nifty new features in the brain right now, it used to be that I had to know exactly how the thought began, so that this autotype would only start at the beginning letter. Now it'll actually identify any characters in a thought name, which is really handy because sometimes I don't remember everything. Sometimes I take a couple different paths to find something. In fact, sometimes when I have trouble finding a thought, what I'll do is I'll be persistent and find the thought, and then I'll remember what was the first thing I thought of in order to look for this thought, and I will then build new links that take me to that particular connection. I will make the new connection so that next time I can find it better, more easily. So here's Kleiner-Perkins, which is a venture capital firm. In fact, I have a whole bunch of VC firms here, Draper Fisher, Hummer Winblad, Moore Davidow. These under VC firms are actually sort of the blue chip firms. Then I have other VCs, which is a thought I started at one point. And notice that there's a scroll bar here, right? So these are the F's, these are the N's. Well, remember there used to be a limit of 256 thoughts under a thought, so then I have even more VCs, and so on and so forth. And now I've actually been putting them all under here because that limit has gone away. So I just keep feeding even more VCs is where I put them, but I keep the blue chip firms up here. So let me go back for a moment to Kleiner-Perkins. So under Kleiner-Perkins are some of the partners, Brooke Byers, Floyd Kwame, John Doerr, et cetera, et cetera. And then on the left, I use these jump links as service links. So for a company, let's say Extensity. For a company, I would have their category above them. So Extensity is I don't even know if they're still around. If we click on this icon right here, we can go to the web, but I don't want to do that right this second. But they're in the time and expense management field, which means if I click there, I can see who else was in that field. Concur Technologies, Free Timesheet, Portable Software. I have a subcategory called Timekeeping, Human Clocks, Kinetics, et cetera, et cetera. But let me go back to Extensity for a second. Under it, I have some of the principals, Bob Spinner, Sharan Sasson. I have no idea what's happened to them. Often what will happen later is as a new startup comes up and I put in the new person's name, it'll turn up that I know 2 or 3 startups that they had before just because they're in here linked up properly in my brain. So I'll go, oh, now I know that they tried to run this company and that company. And then notice to the left here that they got money from Kleiner, but they also got money from Hummer Winblad. And if I click on Hummer, you'll see their portfolio over here on the left with its own scroll bar. And this is not their entire portfolio of investments. These are just the companies that I happen to be interested in and knew were Hummer investments. So let me go back to Extensity. And they also got public relations from Outcast Communications. So if I click on Outcast, now you'll see the same thing happens here. Karen Maroney, Tim Turpin, Margaret Wenmachers. Here are clients of Outcast. So they represented Coca Sports, Respond, Upshot, Blinks, Amplitude Software. They're, of course, under other PR companies, and therefore there's a huge number of PR companies in my brain. And if I go to any one of these companies, if I don't remember what Blinks does, they do video search. They were hot in 2007. In fact, the category was hot in this year. And they're also an autonomy licensee. So if I go up here, I can see Autonomy Inc., which is a neural network vendor that had representation from Edelman. And here, Mike Lynch was the principal, and so on and so forth. So let me stop here and go to Shelley and take me through some of the questions, and that will flesh out more of the details of what I've been doing.